2019 was a big year for our parishes because about 30 of us, myself and my mother included, got to go to the tomb we just heard about. The tomb in Jerusalem, where Jesus was laid to rest after his death and from where he rose. We didn't just get to see the tomb, we got to go in it. And we didn't just get to go in it, we celebrated Mass inside that tomb. It was unbelievable to be in the spot where he laid. One of the other pilgrims on the tour with us, a man named Hamp, had just lost his wife 6 months before we left. And we all got to know her through his sharing. Her name was Mimi, and he spoke of her so beautifully and so lovingly. You may remember a famous picture of me and my mother from the tomb that day. Hamp was the one who took that picture. He turned to me and he said, "Father, just turn toward me. I want to capture this moment." And so he did. And not only was that moment a great memory of when me and my mother were visited by Mother Mary, but it is a beautiful capturing of this memory. Right after he took the picture, Hamp said to me, "It is so peaceful in here." And I said, "I know." And he said, "I wish we could just stay in here and would never have to leave." And I said, "I know." And then there was a pause. And then both of us together said, "No, no. Stay in the tomb? No way. In the tomb." We almost had each other convinced that we should just stay in the tomb. That is the one place Jesus is not. He is not in that tomb. We had to realize that that was a place where he was, not where he is. We had no business in that tomb because he didn't have any business there either. He's not there. We just got to hear the end of John's gospel. And each of the gospels tells the story of Jesus' resurrection from a perfectly beautiful and slightly different perspective. Just like whenever you're telling a story from your family's past, everybody had their own viewpoint about how it went. And in Luke's version, we hear about Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary coming with spices on Easter morning just to make sure that he was as honored as possible. And when they got there, the stone was rolled away, as we heard today. And there were two mysterious figures inside, maybe angels. And as the women looked crestfallen, they said, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead? He's not here. This is the one place he isn't. He's been raised to new life." I'm so glad that that picture was taken so that the moment that Jesus' mother appeared to me and my mother can be captured. But I'm also grateful to have a memory of that conversation with my friend Hamp. We started laughing with the realization that we finally got it. We finally understood that was the one place he wasn't. There was no reason to be in that tomb. To visit, to have witnessed what that was, absolutely. But we don't want to be where he was. We want to be where he is. So this would be a good moment to maybe talk about what it means to believe in resurrection. Because when you are resurrected, you don't need your tomb anymore. But the tomb is part of resurrection by definition. By definition, resurrection can only happen if you die first. You can't be resurrected unless you die. Which is a good time to revisit that message that we heard a couple of weeks ago. That God made no promise to save us from dying. Jesus wasn't saved from dying. We just celebrated Good Friday. The promise of God is not to save us from dying. It's to save us from death. We are saved from death, so we need to visit the tomb. And then, once resurrection happens, as God has promised, we need to get out of there. There's a lot of tomb thought right now for us as we pass the 20,000 mark of those who've died from COVID-19. And then all of us who are dying slow deaths of anxiety and fear over what's going on. And it's so hard for us because in our American lives, we are relatively in control most of the time. So much so that when a tragedy happens, we're shocked because we're usually in such good control. We're usually relatively comfortable. There's not much that we can't dull the pain from. You may have heard that 80% of all painkillers sold worldwide are sold to Americans. We've got all sorts of tools in our medicine cabinet to help us stay comfortable no matter what. But this doesn't respond to Tylenol. So we are doing a lot more thinking about death right now. And that means we've got to do a whole lot more hoping and trusting in resurrection. So to talk about resurrection means we've got to talk about the tomb. Every single one of us has, at some point, stood at the tomb of someone we love. It makes me think of my Polish grandmother, my babci, in Troy, who used to bring me regularly to the cemetery. And we would go and visit the tomb of my grandfather. She wanted me to go there because he died before I was born, and she wanted me to be connected to him. And I would go and look at the etching of his name on the stone and see the dates of his birth and his death. And now when I go there, I see her name there too. So one of the tombs that we need to think about are the actual tombs of our lives, the places where some moments of terrible heartbreak are captured for us in stone. But there are many other tombs also. You may have a tomb in your life from a relationship that ended. You may have a tomb from divorce, from a marriage that couldn't survive some trial in your life. You may be mourning at the tomb of the years lost to addiction, or the years lost to not accepting something about yourself or about someone else and wasting time. You may be standing by the tomb of the year 2019 and all the years that came before it. I was thinking to myself, can you imagine if we had had any advanced glimpse of this and had been able to say to each other 3 months ago, Happy New Year 2020, and then when they blew the noisemaker, say, just gear up. 2020 is going to be a year unlike ones you've seen before. So all those tombs, grief from death, divorce, breakups, addiction, people rejecting themselves and rejecting others and having regrets. And every time we face something like that, every time we're in the tomb, there is a temptation that is always there. And it's the temptation that Hamp and I felt. To stay there. It's always a choice, and sometimes it feels relatively cozy to stay there. It's familiar, it's nice and small. We actually thought it was peaceful in there. Peaceful. Peaceful in the spot where our master was laid after he was murdered. That's not peaceful. Here's how you know that you are staying in the tomb in your own life. Have you ever met someone who is divorced, and when they talk about their ex, they sputter and spit and are so angry and hurt, and you say, oh, I'm so sorry. Is the divorce final yet? How long has it been? Is this 6 months? And it's 20 years. And the angel says, why are you looking for the living among the dead? There's no life here. Maybe you or someone you know has had a bad breakup that ended a terrible relationship. Or maybe a good relationship that went bad. And they talk about the person all the time. And they see them on social media. And they're bringing them up. And they're thinking about how they can get them back. And the angel says, why are you looking for life where there's death? It's not here. Grief counselors tell us that this is a trick of our minds that can happen with grief too. Because what they say is, it is very good and healthy to want to stay attached to the people in our life who've died forever. That's good. But some of us get the person mixed up with the grief. So we can't go on in good conscience. It's been 10 or 20 years and we don't want to be happy in any way because we feel like it would dishonor the person who died. Instead of being attached to our relationship to them, we get attached to our grief. We can't tell the difference. Why are we looking for the living among the dead? So, it's important that we actually listen to the story that John told us today and hear a very important detail. There were things Jesus left behind in the tomb. There was proof that he had been there because he didn't take everything out with him that went in with him. All of the cloths of death, all of the shrouds of the past were laying there. Those cloths were a part of death, and he was alive, so he didn't need them. And I would imagine that after 3 days, they stank. So leave them behind. There was no business for him left in there. So those burial shrouds are really important for us to think about, those cloths. Because it's exactly what happens when someone who knows they have to stop drinking, who knows every sign in their life is telling them, I have to get away from this. And they say to themselves and to others, but I would miss everybody at the bar. Those are burial cloths, and they stink. Get out of there. Why are you looking for the living among the dead? That temptation is always here, every single tomb. And there are signs of that temptation being lived out during COVID-19. Maybe you've seen these. Maybe you've seen them in yourself. Have you heard yourself saying any of those things? In the middle of what is so scary and so hard and so raw, you'll hear some people looking in a direction where there is no life. Before we talk about that, let's talk about where there is life in the midst of COVID-19. Have you seen families out walking together, kids pointing things out to their parents and having conversations with no technology present? If you want to see the best place for entertainment nowadays, you should go on a nature trail. It's amazing. Everyone is socially distantly hiking. And they've got their face masks on, but the kids are asking about what bird is that and what stone, and they're joyfully skipping down the path. We used to have 4 masses every weekend at our 2 parishes, and the attendance would hover around 600 people. Now we have 1 mass, and thousands watch. We used to have a couple of Bible studies in our parishes, but we had no small prayer groups. Now we have 20, and 70 people are involved and growing. We now have a medical mask making ministry so that we, our churches, can be directly connected to getting every single person who is an essential worker a mask that will help keep them protected and help keep the people they serve protected. That's new life. That's new life. All of those things are new life. But you don't have to hang out there. You don't have to go dancing in the forest with those people. You don't have to watch families talking again and having family dinners every night. You don't have to. You know what you might hear yourself saying? I'm so mad at the Chinese government. The tomb. This isn't even real. I hear they're faking death certificates. They're just trying to make a big circus out of this. Leave the burial cloths behind. Maybe I can make some money off of this. I've got some hand sanitizer in the pantry. Put a sign out by the road, $100, first offer. That's death. That's the tomb. Those shrouds stink. We can smell you from here. Get out of there. Get out of there. If you're a Christian watching this, don't you dare go any of those directions. Not on Easter. Not when there is so much new life in the midst of the shadow of the cross. A caterpillar who wants to fly has to get out of that cocoon because you can't stretch any wing space out there, and it is dank and it is sopping wet. If you want to fly, you've got to break out of there and spread your wings. So, the stone has been rolled away and light is shining in our tomb. Like all things, this too shall pass, and we will find our way through this and beyond it. And there is the light of new life shining even now on our faces as we blink and look at the possibilities. The key question for all of us is, what from our old life, from before this, do we want to bring with us? What's essential as we go out into new life? And what else is just burial cloths that we need to leave behind in that tomb?